Paul, I'd love to just learn a little bit more about you, your business, who you are, and what you do to kick us off.
I run a company called Forensic Outcomes, and we use key elements of forensic science, lift that out of the science domain, drop it into the leadership domain or the broader relationship domain where it remains absolutely constant. And we use that as a framework to deliver high and elite performance in teams. Teams normally sort of 15 plus that are struggling with that leadership friction, because we bring friction as people. So we develop leaders across the globe to just do better and lead in a more authentic way that creates performance.
I love that. How did you stumble on pulling that kind of forensic science into the leadership and relationships realm? That's a really interesting
Yeah, well, it comes
way
from
of doing
my
things.
career. I was in the army for 20 years, and very early on in that, I was introduced to this concept of forensic science called the low card exchange principle, which we all know, even though we don't know it's called that. And it simply condenses down to every contact leaves a trace, i.e., wherever you and I are sat at the moment, we're leaving a trace on that environment. Could be our DNA, fingerprints, footprints, fibers from our clothing, and the environment is leaving a trace on us as well. So fibers from the carpet, the victim's DNA,
Hmm.
whatever that might be. And if you lift that up and drop it into the relationship and leadership domain, every interaction, leaves a trace. Every contact leaves a trace. So we can either leave positive, what I call green traces, or negative red traces, and they have various different powerful elements, and we measure them through an app that we've developed called Dacto app, which is called Dacto app because dactylography is the science of taking fingerprints. So there's this sort of theme of forensic analysis science that runs through the leadership that we do.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about your work with Dacto app and with us here at Minimal Viable Launch. So you've been on the traction sprints now. I think you're into your second 90-day sprint,
That's right.
seeing some really big results. But I want to take you back, cast your mind back. So what was happening in your business before we started to work together, right at the start of 2025? What was going on?
Um, Not a lot is the short answer. I was making money. It was enough to pay the bills, but it was not going to set the world on fire. It certainly wasn't achieving what I wanted it to achieve, and so I was sort of perpetually in this scarcity, almost at times poverty mindset. And the focus was on the money. Where am I going to get the next lot from? It was typical feast and famine. Things are going well, the sun's shining, I'm making hay, and then it would all go very quiet. So it was an inconsistent onboarding of clients and sales process. I wasn't routinely attracting new clients. It was a hustle. Everything was a hustle, and I was exhausted. I was absolutely knackered at constantly flogging the horse, except I was the horse.
Okay. And that sounds like there's a lot going on. That feast and famine cycle is so common
Yeah.
for so many businesses, right? Things are really, really good. You feel like you've solved the problem. Next month, nothing comes in. You get busy with fulfillment or trying to scale a team.
Yeah.
Um, but if you had to pick one problem, what was the problem that really made you reach out and say, actually, this is something I want to do? This sprint is what I want to go on because I think it's going to help my business.
Um, Consistency mixed with an element of tangible, quick, noticeable outcomes. I've worked with coaches and mentors in the past, and it's all very laboured. It's a super tanker. Do this, and in 6 months you might start to turn and see a difference.
Hmm.
Whereas I was partly driven by that scarcity and poverty mindset. In the right, if I'm going to do something, it needs to have pretty close to immediate effect.
Hmm. Okay. So wanting to get that, you needed to get that cash flow running in the business, get
Yeah.
those results, and not wanting your traditional coaching package. I'm so glad to hear you say that because we don't consider ourselves traditional coaches. I hate
Good.
the word coach.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so you took that first step. You decided to work with us. Like, um, what really caught your attention about the 90-day sprint program? You've talked about the tangible outcomes, but what really got you bought into that methodology?
Yeah, well, there's two things actually. One was you as an individual. We were fortunate enough to meet at a mastermind dinner in London and sit next to each other for one of the courses of that meal. Uh, I really liked the energy. I felt a connection at that point and thought, at some point I want to work with this guy. And I think that was in 24 at some time.
Hmm.
Um, and as is often the case, I wasn't feeling enough pain at that time to reach out. Pain then occurred, and I thought, right, I've got to do something different. I've got to shake things up because constantly doing the same thing is not working. It's the Einsteinian definition of stupidity, right? Um, so anyway, yeah, I reached out. You explained the structure of the 90 days, and that felt, as I said before, it felt very, very tangible. It felt very real. It felt very achievable. The way you then break down 90 days into fortnightly focus, you can cock up for a fortnight and the train is not going to leave the tracks. But
Hmm.
equally, you can affect and implement massive change in 2 weeks by focusing on a few bits of low-hanging fruit and a couple of really focused points. And that's what I've noticed is the change in that time. So to go back to the question, because I waffled a bit there, a bit of mission creep. What really attracted me was the bite-sized nature of it, and the fact
Hmm.
that if something didn't work for a fortnight, right, bin that, let's move on to the next thing. Or if it did work, great, let's turn the volume on that. That now becomes routine, and let's focus on something else for the next 2 weeks that build on it.
Yep. I think it's so important, right? So many founders are almost like lost in the wilderness of not really knowing what worked. It all feels like luck, and then having this curse of either letting quarters completely drift
Yeah.
from underneath them, or just not really realizing when they're missing targets, right? In this 2 week sprint, I think it's a really nice way to run the business. What was your biggest fears and concerns about this sprint process before you started? What was
Um,
worrying you?
Two really. One, that it wouldn't deliver because so
Hmm.
many things in the past haven't delivered. Um, and then there came the real realization that that was based on me not delivering and losing
Hmm.
faith in the process. Uh, and the other thing was that I would just be too busy.
Hmm.
I was like many founders. I was a busy fool, doing an awful lot of things on an awful lot of areas that were spreading me way too thin. And so the focus is helped me focus, funny old thing, and get rid of the noise and the detritus around me and just go, right, I'm focused on this for a fortnight. Nothing's
Hmm.
going to break or die in a fortnight if I don't focus on that particular thing. So I
Yep.
can afford to put my energy into it. So that, yeah, the two fears were basically me getting in my own way, which has happened before,
Hmm.
and therefore the process, not deliver. And then, frankly, I've thrown an amount of money into another process which makes me a few £1,000 poorer, and I'm not seeing any ROI on it,
Hmm.
which has happened before.
Yep. And I think we've all been there as entrepreneurs, right? You know that personal development, mentoring, coaching helps accelerate the goal.
Yeah,
But so often, I think programs are full of good ideas, not implementation. And we really wanted this to be fast implementation sprint. This is why I hate the word coach, because yes, we do coaching, but I think it's more like in the journey next to you as you're scaling that, learning with you, and solving
yeah.
problems quickly. Um,
It's much more working. I feel I'm working with a mentor and an expert rather than a coach.
mm, I love that. That makes me very happy to hear. The word coaching, yeah, it makes my It's just because I've had the exact same experience with you with the super tanker
Yeah,
analogy, right? Where you have a coach who wants you to turn up and just ask questions, and you're like, but I don't know what questions to ask. That's why I'm here.
yeah. I'm genuinely stuck. So you can ask me as many times as you like how I'm going to get out of it, but actually I'm stuck. I need someone to help me out of it.
Exactly that. Okay, and so in this process, you're in your second 90 days. I think there has been a massive transformation in your business, but I'd love to hear, like, how has your business, how has your life changed from working together? Like, what has that been?
Oh, it's been massive. To be perfectly honest, And I put that down to a couple of things. Firstly, not understanding the value that was right next to me.
Hmm.
You know, I've worked with a couple of people now who, a couple of people who work and try and help people find investors for various things. They say the power, you know, the knowledge and the money is already in your mobile phone. It's
Hmm.
in your
Yep.
contact list. And so working with you to actually write down that contact list as a list of potential people, just make an ask to.
Hmm.
And that ask process in and of itself needn't be, can I have this? It's, listen, I'm doing this. Can you help? Can you introduce
Hmm.
me to someone who? Who do you know who might be valuable in this context? So, yeah, the understanding the value of the people that I already know, the networks that I already exist within,
Yep.
and then putting structure around that. And I think it's a real strength that you and your team bring is you get so close to me as a client. You know me, you know my business, you know the structures that I'm reaching out to. And this is where the mentoring bit comes in. You
Hmm.
then have opened up your knowledge and elements of your network to me that are going to be beneficial, possibly mutually beneficial, I don't know, but certainly beneficial to me. And that, again, in and of itself, is an incredible thing to have that. Um, just the knowledge that you and I meet fortnightly online for an hour, and I know that that hour is going to be a good, fun chat. It's going
Hmm.
to test me cognitively. It's going to push me into an area of discomfort that actually I quite like. And I know that in a fortnight's time, I would have felt that I've let myself down and let you down
Hmm.
if I don't come and say, yeah, I've ticked all these things off on this list because it's not moving the business forward. And it's only a fortnight, so why shouldn't I focus on those things?
Yeah, I love that, and I think you know this is one of the great joys of running this program is getting to be in the business with you, learning and coming up with those ideas of what we're going to do because we're running mini 2 week experiments essentially. Not
Yeah.
all of them work, but we always learn something from them that informs the next play. And I
But
think as
if they
more
don't
entrepreneurs,
work, it's only a fortnight, right? Rather than
exactly,
I've just spent thousands of pounds, I'm 6 months down and it didn't work. And that is
e-
like a kicker in the clangers every time it happens.
exactly that. And
I
it's
think,
this mindset of constant learning and experiment.
yeah, and that has changed the way I approach other things as well. So I
Hmm.
think, I mean, this might sound a little bit out there, a little bit woo woo, but my energy has changed.
Hmm.
My enthusiasm has changed. I've fallen back in love with my own business and you know what I do, and that is bringing opportunity. It's weird, you know. People say there's an energy and it manifests things. Now, how much of that I believe, I don't really know, but things have happened. So, and I believe that because invoices have been sent and paid in that time frame. So, I believe the fact that the bank manager says this is looking good is
Well,
looking
I
good.
think you've had your biggest. We've just had this discussion this morning.
Yeah.
I said it must have been your biggest quarter ever, and I think you kind of said I think it's my biggest year ever in one quarter.
Yeah, Q1 of 2025 has created more revenue than any other year in business over the last 8 years that I've been in business since leaving the military.
That is incredible. And you know, I think going back to your point on energy, I do think that is a thing. And look, it's whether you know, there's different ways to explain it, right? But the core fundamental principle is you now have belief and
Yeah,
faith that what you have is valuable. You have a framework to ask things for from people for things that will move you forward, and you are doing that in a consistent way that's now scaling up, and
yeah,
you've created an engine of growth that delivers value to your clients that will make you more money
yeah.
in the long run, right? And I think that's why we're seeing the numbers move so far north that we are.
So I was just going to say that you know the revenue at the start of the year has totally removed that scarcity poverty mindset, which means I can now spend time doing things properly, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. You and I speak about a runway. You know, I've now got a runway out to beyond 12 months where I know all my bills are paid
Mm-hmm.
without, you know, before I actually get on any new clients, that's done. So now it's affording me to carry risk, and I can go, right, let's try that one.
Yeah.
That's not low hanging fruit. That's going to take a bit of squeeze. So let's do the squeeze, and if it delivers, great. That's more revenue. If it didn't, then we're going to learn an awful lot through that process, and we can then do it in a different direction with the lessons that we've learned.
And I think it speaks to a really important point that when we are feeling like the business is closing in around us, that stress puts you into fight or flight mode. You're in your lizard brain, you're in your survival brain.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest routes for entrepreneurs to have way faster success, and it's really hard to do, but if you can shock the system and get into your visionary mode where you feel opportunity is abundant, that you are going to be successful and that the risk is worth taking, you will do things that you otherwise would have talked yourself out of before. And the opportunity was always there. You're now just capitalizing on it. There is a never-ending stream of money flowing out there in the economy, trillions of dollars, pounds, whatever, that you could never hope to ferry into your bank account. But you've just got to stick a bucket into the stream and take some of it for yourself, which is what you've been doing. And that's a virtuous cycle now in the business. And we're going to get, playbooks that scale more, etc. I love it. It's been absolutely incredible working with you, and I can't wait to be continuing to work with you and see where we can take this transformation. If you were to give advice to a founder who's like thinking about this process, they're a little bit hesitant, they're a little bit scared. It's a big investment, right? I'm not cheap because I make you lots of money. What would you say to that founder about taking that risk?
I'm going to use one of your lines. I've taken on a member of staff now. I'm looking at taking on another one. A good hire never loses you money. And working with minimum viable launch, as far as I'm concerned, is a great hire. And it's creating opportunity, and opportunity creates revenue, and revenue creates a level of comfort whereby you can then carry risk and double down and go even harder. And yeah, that is, as you say, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Absolutely. All the profit is in the risk. And we've got to take more of it if we want more profit. Paul, I've absolutely loved this conversation. Love working with you. And thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you.